Appreciate it. Way to look out. All right, so one of the things my roommate just reminded me that I should touch on is how online savings accounts work, okay? So remember I called it my offshore account. I don't know if you guys heard me say that word, right? And that's because the money, I cannot go into a physical bank to get the money, neither can I access the money immediately. It typically takes 24 to 48 hours, okay? So if you have anything, I have my Bank of America account. So I use Bank of America to do all my daily transactions, my mortgage, my credit cards, my everything else comes from Bank of America. The online savings accounts, I have it automated to where I'm doing it automatically save this amount. So it will pull, I don't know, 500, 1,000, whatever, however much you want to have it set up, right? So it will pull that out on a scheduled cadence. But if you need to access that money for anything, it will take 24 to 48 hours for that money to go from that online account back into your Bank of America, whatever your primary account is. Okay, so you guys just need to remember that in case it does not have the same level of access. I like that it doesn't have the same level of access because what it will make me do is it makes me think before I actually go pull money from there. Okay. All right, let's go on. All right, so I love this quote from Robert Kiyosaki. And in this session, what we're going to now start to really take a hairy deep dive into our investment vehicles, investment ways, etc. And he talks about how poor people see a dollar as something that they want to trade for right now. I have a dollar, I want to go buy a soda. I have a dollar, I want to go buy some shoes, right? Whereas rich people see money as a seed. For those of you guys who attend River of Life, I talked about it a little bit, and I said, to me, a seed is anything that has the ability to duplicate itself. Money has the ability to duplicate itself if you know how to use money to duplicate itself, okay? And that's what investing is. So we're going to talk a little bit about investing and how you need to think about investing and what are some of the areas that you can now start to invest in. So here I just put everybody has seen this. Everybody knows net worth calculations, net worth. Net worth is literally take all your assets. So when you think about assets, it's anything you can liquidate for cash, even if it's a depreciating asset. My car is a depreciating asset. I can liquidate it today for cash. So it's considered an asset. You take all your asset, subtract your liabilities, and that is your net worth, okay? So if you hear somebody that says, I have a net worth of $1 million, it means that they might be making, they might have $20 million, right? But if they owe $19 million, their net worth is only $1 million, okay? Does that make sense? All right, these are the different types of asset classes that you tend to see. So commodities, we'll talk a little bit about that on the 22nd. So commodities, bonds, cash, stock, mutual funds, vehicles, real estate, personal property. I put the two ones that are depreciating asset classes in red. And the only thing that I would say about personal property is that unless you're like a collector, some people might collect Monets. Gold. Yeah, you collect gold. That's personal property that actually appreciates. Some people might collect Air Jordans, right? That's I hate to say it, but that also appreciates, right? I know some people who bought the shoes and sell them for over $1,000. I was like, who's buying sneakers for $1,000? And they're like, they're there. So I'm like, hey, if that's what you want to do, as long as it appreciates, that's all that matters, okay? So these are the different types of asset classes that they are. So there are 5 main asset categories, okay, when you think about investing, okay? So there's cash. Cash is an asset, okay? If I have I don't have $1 on me, it's my wallet, but if I have $1, that is an asset, okay? Stocks are equities, right? This is share of ownership that's issued by a public corporation. Commodities. Commodities are anything that come out of the earth. Corn is a commodity. Oil is a commodity. Gold is a commodity, okay? Real estate, this is property. Everybody knows, I'm not gonna go into real estate. Bonds, we'll talk a little bit about bonds in a few classes, but basically this is a loan that is issued by an entity over a duration of time for a coupon rate, okay? And we'll talk, I don't want you guys to think we're gonna break all these down right now. We're gonna really dive deep into these in the next two classes, but I want to show you guys the main asset categories, okay? So what type of investment accounts are available to you? So there are retirement accounts, education accounts, and there's standard accounts. So we were chatting a little bit, right, about standard accounts. We're not going to talk in too much detail about standard accounts. The one thing you need to understand is that standard accounts work the exact same way as retirement accounts. The only difference is that they are not tax advantaged accounts. And we'll talk a little bit about what tax advantage means, okay? All right, so retirement accounts, education accounts, and also standard accounts. So we're gonna take a deep dive in these next few minutes into retirement accounts and also education accounts. One of the things that you guys have got to remember when you're investing is that you are investing, but you also want to limit your tax liability, right? We talked a little bit about taxes, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense if I am getting a lot of money and I'm paying too much money out on the back end in taxes, right? I mean, on the long story short, you're still getting money, right? So let me not say that. Let me not say that don't invest if you're going to pay more taxes. No, because if you're paying more taxes, it means that you're making more money. Okay? Recognizing your costs and your tax liability is where retirement accounts and some of these educational accounts come into play. All right. The other thing is that when we'll talk about it in future classes is that when you're selling assets like stocks, you're selling bonds, you're selling mutual funds, etc. If it is not in a tax sheltered account, you will get hit with taxes, okay? And you need to be smart, and you need to understand what the tax implication of the appreciation of my asset is going to mean, okay? Or on the flip side, you just need to get a good accountant. You can actually get a lot of accountants that can help you to figure out what a good account. If you know of one, tell me, because I've been looking for a good accountant that I can put on retainer to. I'm serious. I want to be able to call and be like, I have $10,000. What do I do with this money? So I don't get hit with taxes. All right.
Could you give an example? So you're talking about wanting to minimize the taxes when you have to actually take out the money or something like that. Could you give an example of a timeline?
Yes. So actually, can you hold that thought and remind me when we go to this, because I'm gonna draw out some things for you. So retirement accounts. Let's jump a little bit into retirement accounts, right? The reason I'm always going to tell you to maximize your retirement accounts is because I call them tax shelters. The right word is tax advantaged accounts, okay? So one of the things that I wanted to put out here is to show you guys kind of where we are as, I was going to say an organization, but y'all are not an organization, how we are as a society, okay? 36% of Americans are yet to begin to save or to have any kind of retirement savings. 41% of people do not have $500 to cover an emergency. And 43% of millennials lack any type of retirement savings, okay? So these are some of the stats that we're trying to figure out how do we combat, right? And there's always a question as to how much do I need for retirement, okay? I'm going to give you the answer that I have found with every single, you can actually, I don't know if you guys know this, if you go online, there are retirement calculators that will tell you, are you on track to savings? There are no two retirement calculators that I have ever put my information in that gives me the same amount of detail. There's some that would be like, great, you're doing a great job for retirement. There's some that would be like, no, you're doing a piss poor job for retirement, okay? So there is not an answer but I'm going to give you a formula that's going to help you to determine what your answer needs to be, okay? This is an image that I took from Fidelity, and it basically shows what they believe your salary should be. So at the age of 30, you should have at least 1 times however much you make in your retirement portfolio. At the age of 35, you should have 2x, et cetera. One of the things that a lot of people think about is that with retirement, they want to be able to have at least $1 million. I don't know if you guys have heard that a lot, but a lot of people are like, I want at least $1 million by the time I retire, right? I don't know if you guys have heard. Yes? No? Okay, good. So a lot of people are saying that they want at least $1 million. Here is what I have here are the averages by age of what we have as a society, right? So you can see that we are not even close, right, to hitting the $1 million mark. Remember when I told you at the beginning of the class that the earlier you start, the better it is going to be for you. I keep running into this thing. I'm going to move it. So remember I told you that the earlier you start, the better it's going to be for you, right? And remember, I told you that interest is how hard your money is. Perfect. Interest is how hard your money is working for you. So if you start at age 20, for all of you guys who are young in here, I'm looking at only one. So if you start at, I know you're not 20, but if you start at age 20, right? And you look at how your savings return. So if you have just a 6%, which is actually a very average, amount, or you have an 7%, 8%, 10%, that's how much you need to save to be able to retire with $1 million by the age of 65. Do you see why I say you get started early? If you start at age 50, you need to be able to save $3,439 to start, okay, or to be able to hit $1 million by the time you turn 65. That's why it's better for you guys to start where you are, okay? And this has to do with the science of compounding. Remember when we looked at how compounding works? So it's not, reaching $1 million is not a stretch goal if you start early. You actually see, to me, it's actually like $95 a month. I mean, that's pretty easy, to do. Well, let me not say it's pretty easy. It should be doable, all right? So I just wanted to show you guys this. Now, yes?
We're gonna have a copy of this?
Yes, I'll send out the copy of the deck to you.
So like I've seen apps like Robinhood and what's this other Acorn, are these investment accounts? I don't know.
Yes, they're brokerages.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll talk about brokerages in not the next class, but the class after that. Okay. So what a brokerage is, what do they do, how do they do stock or different transactions, etc. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to show you guys this. Now, I want to answer the question as to how much you need when you retire. There is no consensus that you will find out in society, whether you're reading Investopedia, whether you're reading Forbes, whether you're reading Market Watch. There's nobody who's going to say, here's the magic number. But what they are going to tell you is that you can always use the 4% rule. And the 4% rule is how much you can pull out of your retirement account and for the money not to run out. So for the money to live in perpetuality, okay? Some people say that if you really want to be on the safe side, you can use 3%. 3% is aggressive, but 4% is how much you can pull out of the account for that money to remain in perpetuality. And if you think about it, right, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in future classes. If you had a risk-adverse portfolio, the average return you're going to get on that portfolio is about 4%. That's why they say if you pull 4% out, you can basically almost be guaranteed to get 4%, so your money does not run out. Does that make sense? Okay.
Break that down into numbers?
Yes. So let's say that $1 million, right? That's a great one. So we pull you have $1 million in retirement. You use a 4% rule. So that means that I can pull $40,000 out of the account, right? I want you guys to hear that because many of you guys don't realize that $1 million might not be enough. No, seriously, it might not be enough. If you are using the 4% rule and you have $1 million, right, it means that you can only pull $40,000 out of the account every year.
For it not to run out.
For it not to run out.
It's a 4%.
Exactly.
Anyway, so net gain 0.
Net gain 0. Exactly. Say that again?
I'm just wondering, 40,000 every year.
Every year. It's not a lot.
You're surviving on 40,000 a year right now.
Exactly.
Because you have 80, you need 2 million.
Exactly. So that's why you need to use the 4% rule. So that's why I can't tell you you need $2.5 million because I don't know how you live. There's some people who might be able to get by on like $10,000, per year because they're very frugal and they know how to move money, right? They don't need a lot to be able to retire. There's some people who got high-end lifestyles. They living on $250,000. They can't use $1 million. They will run out of money real quick, okay? So you guys just always use the 4% rule to gauge how much money you actually need in your retirement account. So if you want to be able to pull $100,000 out of the account, you need $2.5 million in that account. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
This is with the expectation that the market doesn't stays at a minimum as a 4% yearly, right?
This is
This is with the assumption, because you said some years are better than others, so you can
yes.
gain 13%.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So the average market return over the years, people always tell you is 8%.
Right.
So I showed a graph. So last year the S&P 500 had the one of the largest returns that it had over the past 10 years. It was at 31%, right? This year, I don't know if you guys saw with the coronavirus yesterday, stocks tanked, took a nosedive off the face of a cliff. I couldn't even look at my portfolio. I was crying so hard. So you never know what's going to happen. And that's why I always say that you got to invest for the long term. Okay? Is this clear? I want to make sure everybody understands this. Yes? All right, fantastic. Okay, so path to $1 million plus, and I put $1 million plus there, not $1 million. All right, start today. If you don't have a retirement account, start today. Participate in your 401ks. How many of you guys work for a company that has 401k matchings? Fantastic. The minimum amount you should put is the match amount. That is absolute minimum under any kind of circumstance. Okay, but I literally, the reason why I have so much money in my retirement account is not because I knew all this when I was younger. It's because I can't remember what happened, but I was talking with one of my coworkers. This is when I just graduated from college. And I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers, and at that time I was working for TI. And I was like, I just put 4% in my retirement account. And he was like, no, you need to put at least 10%. So I just developed a habit of having at least 10% in my retirement account. And now I have more, but because my goal and your goal is to max that thing out. Okay? And yes, there's a cap. That's why you max it out. So the cap for 2020 is $19,500. So, but you max it out. And we'll talk a little bit about why you max it out. So this might look daunting. You might look at 10% and 15% and say to yourself, my goodness, I can't get there right now, right? That's okay. So here's what I'm going to tell y'all to do. Wherever you can, at least the minimum, right? The minimum is the match. So 4%, right? How many of you guys get raises every year? Hopefully. Okay. She shook her head. Sorry for you medical people. Y'all already make money, so I don't feel sorry for you. So what you can do, let's say I'm putting 4% in today, right? And let's say I get a 3% raise. Guess what you can do? Next year, you can go from 4% to 7%. What we tend to do is we get that raise and we spend it. And now that just becomes part of our expenses, all right? And so you never actually see how that money can, or what that money can do for you, okay? So start wherever you are, but if you want, on your goal to maxing this out, just take that money or take your promotions and just what do you call it? Increase it by that percentage, and that's how you can now start to max it out.
So I have a question.
What's up?
401k, yes, you're right, there's a cap of 19,500. Is there a cap on personal retirement accounts, I don't know, Roth IRA? Or
Yes,
do they-
it's actually lower.
Oh.
Yeah,
And is
and
that separate? So
Yes.
You have a personal retirement account and you have a.
so you can't. So no, you can't do that. But there is a. So yes and no. You can have an IRA or you can have a Roth and you can have a 401k, but there are income limits to be able to do that.
Okay.
All right. Those are not in the view. Don't see those as personal accounts. They're retirement accounts. And the reason why I say that don't see it as personal accounts is because personal accounts, because I can literally I have a personal brokerage account, right? And that one I buy stocks, I have Apple stock, I have whatever stocks, in that personal account. The main difference is that it's not a tax shelter, okay?
Yes, exactly.
So that is not a tax shelter, but those two accounts, traditional IRA, Roth IRAs, 401ks, those are just retirement accounts. So just see those, even though they might be at different brokerages, they're the same types of rules that apply for them.
I think what I'm trying to understand, what I'm trying to get clarity on is, if I'm capped out on my
401k.
my company provided 401k at 19,500.
Mm-hmm.
If I open a personal retirement account,
Mhm.
even if I'm capped on that, and I didn't know that, so
Mhm.
you're saying there's a cap on that as well.
Yes.
Is that whatever goes into that separate retirement account? Is that deemed as part of the 19,500, or that's an increment? That's in addition.
That's in addition.
Okay.
And the short answer is that you can, but you need to meet the income limits. So take, for example, to be able to contribute to a Roth and to be able to contribute, if I max out my 19,500 on a 401k, I can contribute to a Roth, right? But I can only do that if I'm under I have the numbers in here, $137,000 adjusted gross income. So so that's why I'm like,
For the people.
for the people. That's how you gotta, look, in this country, you're gonna pay taxes. Let us just be real, all right? They're trying to make sure that you pay your share of taxes. All right.
But even with the Roth, you pay the taxes up front, so
Uh-huh.
I don't understand the benefit of, I guess, from the
Perfect.
government standpoint.
We're gonna get into that because that actually goes into the question that she had and why I told her to hold her question. So we're gonna talk about these three. We're gonna talk about these three accounts. So 401k, traditional IRAs, and also Roth IRAs. So common characteristics of retirement accounts. There's a contribution limit. So for all these accounts you see, every single one, there is a limit. Okay. But these are all tax advantaged account. And I'll talk a little bit about what tax advantage means. You can invest in different assets, okay? In 401ks, you can actually invest in mutual funds, okay? You can't invest in regular stocks in 401ks. In traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs, they have the ultimate investment flexibility. You can buy whatever you want, all right? So you have investment assets, and we'll look a little bit at the profile of those three. There's something that's called a required minimum distribution. These are mostly for accounts in which you're not paying the taxes yet. And they actually just increased this age. It was 70 and a half, now it's 72, which is good. But I joke around, I was like, look, the required minimum distribution ensures that you start paying taxes on that money. So if you have a 401k, unless you're still working, a 401k or a traditional IRA, once you hit 72, you need to start paying taxes. If you don't start paying taxes, they will actually collect 50% of the amount of money that you were supposed to take out as a penalty. So there's an RMD. I know majority of you guys are not in here are not even close to 72, but I just want you guys to know that there's an RMD on there. And then early distribution penalty. So you guys need to understand that with retirement accounts, you cannot touch the money. With all retirement accounts, you cannot touch the money until you hit 59 and a half. okay? Otherwise, you will incur what is called an early distribution penalty of 10%. So what they'll do is that they'll take your money gets taxed as income, meaning whatever your effective tax rate is for that year. So if your effective tax rate is 23%, they'll tax it at 23%, and then they will add an additional 10% on top of that because you took the money out when you weren't supposed to. All right, making sense? Fantastic. All right, let's answer y'all's questions versus two different tax concepts, because this was something that hung up a lot of people in the first class. So hopefully you guys can see this. If you can't, I'll hold it up later. There are two different tax concepts that you guys have to realize when you look at these tax or these retirement accounts. There's pre-tax, post-tax, and then there's also tax-free growth. When you are in a 401k, and I'm just going to use for simplicity, I'm just going to use round numbers. All right, so let's say you make $100,000 a year. And you actually listen to me, and you now are putting 10% into it, so you have 10%, right? So that's $10,000. Your adjusted growth or your adjusted income, it's now 90,000, not 100,000. If you are doing a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA. So traditional accounts or traditional IRA and a 401k just means that you are investing with pre-tax dollars. So they take this $10,000 and they transfer it into an account, right? And you invest this $10,000, but you have not paid taxes on this $10,000, right? All right, so you guys understand that concept. In a Roth IRA, instead of having the 90,000, you have 100,000, right? After they take out taxes, let's say your effective tax rate was, 20%. So you're left with $80,000. You take 10% of that and you invest it. So you now have $10,000, all right? But it's after tax dollars that you're investing. Does that make sense? Okay, everybody following me? Okay, good. The reason these are called tax advantage accounts is not about whether you're doing pre-tax or post-tax, okay? Because you're gonna pay taxes. So the reason they're called tax advantage accounts is because when you put this money in and you start investing this money, any growth on this money, whenever you execute a sale, is not taxed. In this country, whenever you have an investment, anything, and it appreciates, there's some tax rule as to how you need to pay taxes on the appreciation. So let's say I had $10,000 and this money now over 7 years, because we got according to the rule of 72, right? Let's say we're getting 10% back. So in 7 years, I now have doubled my money. So $20,000, right? If I was to sell, right, and buy another asset, I have netted 10K. Does that make sense? If I was in a personal retirement or had a not personal retirement, if I had a personal account and it was $10,000, I have to pay taxes on this $10,000. When I am in a tax sheltered account, I don't have to pay taxes on this $10,000. That's why they're called tax advantage accounts. All right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Everybody clear? All right, good. What was your question again? About?
No, I think I was thinking of like a specific example, like if you
of when you pay taxes.
into like your Roth, putting the taxes before or after when you take it out.
Yeah. So does this answer? This answers the question. All right, fantastic. So this is how that would work, and then hopefully this also answers your question about pre versus post and why these accounts work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, fantastic. I want to make sure you guys understand this. So yeah.
I was going to ask, but there's still something about Roth IRAs where when you hit 59 and a half and you become eligible to withdraw from that account, you can pay, if you do a Roth IRA, there's a difference where you don't pay taxes.
You don't pay taxes.
Versus a traditional where
Yes.
you pay taxes on the growth. Is that
Yeah, great question. Thank you for reminding me that I didn't cover that. So this scenario, right, is a traditional account where you're paying taxes pre, all right? So, you're paying taxes post. So the $10,000 is not taxed. Remember when I told you guys $1 million, if you have 4%, then it's $40,000? When you pull out that $40,000, if you were in a 401k, it's going to be taxed at whatever that tax rate is, all right? If you have a Roth IRA, so let's do another example. So let's say I have 100,000, right? I'm doing a Roth IRA, but I'm still contributing 10%. But let's say my effective tax rate is 20%, all right? So I paid $20,000 in taxes. So my net take home at the end of the day is $80,000. Just for simplistic sakes, right? So $20,000 in taxes. I've already paid my taxes on this money. So this is after-tax dollars. $80,000 is after-tax dollars. If I'm contributing 10% of this 100,000, right? Minus $10,000. So, So I now have $70,000 and $10,000 has gone into my IRA account, okay? Or to my Roth account, right? So the same concept applies here. If I grow this money to $20,000 and I sell it, I won't get hit with taxes because it's in a tax sheltered account. When I am ready to pull money out of here, I won't get hit with taxes because I've already paid taxes on it. Okay, so that's the main difference between a Roth and a traditional IRA or 401k. So the idea of pre-tax versus post-tax just means when am I paying taxes? Am I paying taxes before the money goes into the account, or am I paying taxes when I'm pulling the money out of the account? Either way, you're paying taxes in that. The tax advantage is that when the money is in the account and it's growing, I'm not paying taxes on that growth at that time. Make sense? Fantastic.
Can you talk through the rationale, like when you're thinking about, do I want this money to be pre-taxed or post-tax? What are the things that you consider?
That's a great question, because my brother and I were having a conversation about this, and it goes to your point about what are your goals? If you are trying to decrease your tax liability, I would do 401k. Okay? And that's because if you look at this scenario, right? I'm making $100,000, I'm putting $10,000 to 10%. I'm paying taxes only on $90,000 at that point. All right? The advantage of a Roth IRA is because you don't know what the tax law is going to be when you pull money out. You don't know if it's going to increase, you don't know whatever. So a lot of people prefer to pay taxes now and know that they've already paid the taxes regardless of what happens in the future. But if you pay taxes now, that puts you in this scenario where your adjusted gross income is going to be high, okay? And if that's fine with you, then that's fine. But if you're trying to reduce your taxes, you go with the 401k. If you are too concerned about when you want to pay taxes and you'd rather pay the taxes now than take the risk of what's going to happen in the future, you go with a Roth type of a setup. Okay. But the other thing that I was going to tell you guys is that the majority of organizations actually have just 401ks. 401ks are this setup, where you are investing with pre-tax dollars. Some are providing the flexibility to have Roth in addition to that, but the majority of them are just traditional 401ks. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right.
I've seen an example or an option for a Roth 401k.
Yes.
What is that? Is that
That's one that's growing. It's basically this setup, but with the limits of a regular 401k. So a Roth 401k will let you invest up to $19,000, so whatever the what do you call it? So $19,500, but all of that money is coming out of your paycheck with after-tax dollars. After-tax dollars, yeah. So it was going to be expensive. All right.
But then you pay the tax.
But then you've paid the taxes. Yep. Make sense? All right. So, I don't think we need to go into a lot of depth here because we've talked a lot about them, but is there any questions you guys might have about 401ks? I'm looking at the only thing that I know here is that for those of you guys who are over 50, there's a catch-up contribution of $6,500. The other thing to note with 401ks is that your company has already selected the funds that you can select. All right. So with 401ks, you tend to see like maybe 30 options, right? And you just have to pick from 30 options, which make it easy. You know, it's not daunting, and a lot of times the options they're pretty decent. I wouldn't say they're the best, but they're pretty decent to be able to grow your portfolio. When you get into a traditional IRA or Roth IRA, you can buy anything. If you want to go buy Amazon stock, if you want to go buy commodities, if you want to go get some Bitcoin, you can buy whatever you want with those type of accounts. But the issue with that is that it's overwhelming because you literally can buy anything you want. So you just don't know like where to start, where to put your money. So sometimes those types of accounts are a little bit overwhelming. And I'll talk to you guys on the 22nd about how to read a mutual fund. So when you're making the selections, you actually know what to look for the best performing types of funds for your retirement accounts. Okay? All right.
So I was gonna say something I think this might be something you cover later on, but for 401ks where you get a choice, where your company provides you a choice, I mean, what I've seen is some of those funds charge different, what they call
Fees. Yeah.
fees, management fees. Right?
Yeah.
So for equally performing funds, you're always, I mean, it's always good to be cognizant of what, I mean,
Yeah. No, we'll talk about it because what we'll talk about is the difference between an index fund and a regular mutual funds. And a lot of people think that index funds, and I know I'm losing some people because you don't know what an index fund, a lot of people think that index funds don't perform as well as a fund with an active manager, and that's actually not true. So index funds have lower cost profiles, yeah. All right, so the only thing here that I wanted to mention is that for those of you guys who might be teachers or work with nonprofits, your 401ks are something that's called 403bs. So but it works the exact same way. All right, traditional IRA, I think we've covered a lot of the stuff here. Do you guys have any questions on 401k, traditional IRA, or Roth? So we can jump into the education accounts. Any questions?
So this 6,000 will be in addition to the 19.5, but only if you earn less than 137.
There's a number. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head, but yeah. And it's the same thing with Roths. So they have something that, and talk to me after. There's something that I've been looking into. It's called a backdoor Roth IRA. It basically allows you to put money in a traditional IRA and then roll it over into a Roth. So it's like a back way to circumvent the system. All right. Okay, so this is important. Did you guys know that you all needed a beneficiary for all your investment accounts? So if, God forbid, anything happens to you, there's somebody, your money just doesn't go into a black hole, it's back to the government. So whenever you get home, if you don't already have a beneficiary designated for all your investment accounts, go do that, like when you get home. Okay? All right.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Like further support that?
Yeah.
So
He's a lawyer.
I'm an attorney. I highly recommend you do this because if you don't do this, then your family has to go to probate court and then just drags it out and it delays how quickly your family can get access to your funds. So any account that you have, checking, saving, or definitely investment account, designate a beneficiary because then you don't need to get a judge involved. And to go to probate court, you have to hire a lawyer. You know, it costs money. Yeah.
I didn't even know you could do that for checking and savings.
Oh yeah.
Oh, see, I gotta go do something when I get home
most
too.
Of them, like you can either have an account with right of survivorship.
Yeah.
So like you die, death certificate, the bank just turns it over.
Uh-huh.
But if you ask where can I designate my beneficiary? Like my wife and I have an online bank account. We designate the beneficiary. So it's just a form, just like with anything else.
So quick question, how about if you have a living will? Does a will supersede whatever you put in there as a beneficiary?
No, because these are considered non-probate assets. So a will is going to be your instructions for how your stuff that you did not leave other instructions for when you're dead. So the designation of a beneficiary are like instructions that you've already made, and the will kind of supplement to that.
Got it.
Doesn't override that unless your will says, I override
Right,
what
that.
you designated.
That's very good.
So, sorry, thank you. But will that also work for, so I get these random calls that this account that you opened while you're in college, you haven't accessed it, and we're about to close it and take the money to the government?
Yeah.
Will that work for that too if you select a beneficiary?
Generally, it depends. I got one of those calls like in the last year. I called them back. I was like, give me my money now. It just depends on what the terms of that account agreement says. So you don't want it going to the government because then you might get a letter saying, hey, the Texas Secretary of State has these funds that are unclaimed. They look like they might be yours. It's like you've lost the potential of that money. So if you get that call, man, follow up.
So beneficiaries wouldn't cover that particular
So
scenario?
the point of a beneficiary designation is if you're dead.
If you're-
So if you're alive, it's not going to be.
Your
affected.
Yeah, money goes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Alright. All right, fantastic. All right, so let's touch a little bit on college funds. I know some of you guys in here have children, some of you guys don't have children, so I will try to get through this part, really quickly for you guys that have kids. So college debt is at the highest level that it's ever been. I know, that's a big one. I remember, let me tell y'all a true story. Like because I went to UT, right? I told you guys I was an electrical engineer undergrad. My first semester, I was taking 15 hours and my tuition cost was $1,500. By the time I graduated, I was taking 10 hours and my tuition cost was $4,000. By the time David went to school at Texas A&M, because he's a chemical engineer, there were, like $9,000 they were paying out. So like the cost of college is not just incrementally going up, it is exponentially going up, okay? So here's one of the things that I found. The average college costs typically triple over a 17-year period. So if you're trying to understand how much money your kid is going to need after you have them, take whatever it is today, multiply that times 3, times how many ever children you have, and that's how much you need. times 4, times 3, and then times 4 because you got 4 years. So college is not cheap. I saw this and I thought it was so funny because I'm like, yeah, there are data breaches everywhere except for the actual college, the student loan sites. So, all right. So how much do you need to save for college? It depends. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that you need to do X, Y, and Z, right? There are a lot of families that plan to fund maybe 25% of their kids' college expenses. If that's your goal, right, and make sure you understand what you want to do. If that's your goal, then that determines how much you would need. So the other question you've got to ask yourself is how much can you comfortably save every month? The other question is, are you already contributing to a retirement plan? If you are not contributing to a retirement plan, do that first before you open up any kind of education account for your kiddos, okay? And then the last question is, what type of investor are you? And the reason why this is important is because what you'll see is that there are three primary college savings vehicles, right? There's the 529, there's the ESA account, and then there's the UGMA/UTMA accounts, right? And all of these have different restrictions. Okay, so let's take a look at what they look like. So the 529 savings plan is actually the most common. Okay, do you have a question or are you just?
No.
Okay, all right. So the 529 account, it's the most popular college savings account. And the way that this works is that, so remember this example, right, that I showed you guys here? A 521 account works like a Roth. So you contribute with post-tax dollars, right? Your money grows tax-free. And then whenever you pull that money out, if it's for a qualified education expense, you don't have to pay taxes on it. Okay? So that's why the 529 accounts are so popular. And then I think with the overhaul, I don't know if it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, with the overhaul of the tax system, what they also did was that they are now saying 529 accounts can actually fund K to 12th grade of up to $10,000 per child. Okay, so if you've got a kid and let's say they go to a private school that costs $20,000, you can actually use $10,000. You use $10,000 that might be in your 529 accounts. All right. There are limits, just like they are with everything else. The max that you can have for any beneficiary in Texas is $370,000. It's a lot of money. Okay. But what you need to be thinking about is that the max you can give to each child per parent. So if you have 2 parents, you can give them up to $30,000, right, without having to trigger what's called the gift tax exclusion law. The gift tax exclusion law just basically says that you can give up to $15,000 without it counting to your lifetime, gift contributions. There are people who are millionaires and they can't give more than $11.4 million without having to pay taxes. I'm like, it's so ridiculous. I'm like, you're giving somebody money, you got to pay taxes on the money that you're giving them. What sense does that make? But anyways, you just taxes.
Wait, let me get this right. I'm not trying to think backwards.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say at the end of the year, you do your calculations and you owe a lot in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you gift 15,000 into your 529 and it counts?
No, because it's still out. It's still after tax dollars. I can't help you this year. I'm telling you guys, look, my key is what you guys have got to understand is that wealthy people literally have accountants on retainer. Okay? And the reason you got these accountants is because they understand tax law back, forth, inside out. And they can tell you exactly what you need to do to decrease your tax liability. Things like backdoor Roths, right? If you want to kind of circumvent and dance around some loopholes that they've created that average people like you and I don't know about. So, and because the tax law is always changing, they might be adding things and things might be changing, right? So that's why it's always good to always have you need a good accountant. All right? Okay, so the other thing I was going to tell you guys with 529 accounts is that you designate a beneficiary, but I think the biggest, there are 2 big things with this account. It does not have ultimate, and I call it ultimate investment flexibility. It's almost kind of like a 401k with regards to investment options. They're options. They're not going to say you can invest in stocks, etc. They're going to give you a limited set of options that you can choose for that 529 account. Okay? And the good thing is that there are no mandatory withdrawals. And if the child does not end up using all of the funds for the 529 account, you can actually roll it into another child or you can roll it to yourself. Okay? So you don't have, if you don't use all the money, it doesn't just go into a black hole.
Roll it yourself, you mean roll it into a 401k? Roll it to
No. You can roll it. No, you can roll it to naming you as the beneficiary. So if you want to go back, let's say, get your master's or get a PhD, you can do that, and you can use that money to pay for it. But the key thing is, it needs to go through to an education cost. Otherwise, they're going to hit you with a 10% penalty. So you're literally paying income, and then you pay 10%.
That means it doesn't make sense to have a 529 in a super optimistic scenario that you haven't spent money in.
What do you mean?
I mean, you're saying, assuming a scenario where all three kids have gone through school,
Mm-hmm.
and I have maybe $500 sitting in a 529.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I'm probably 60 or 70. I'm not planning on going to school anymore. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I cash that money, I will be paying
You'll be paying
additional 10%
yes.
on top of the fact that I already
Paid
disappeared
tax.
$5.
Yeah.
Then you assume a 10% growth, right? That's the point of the 529 for it to grow.
Yeah, that's the point of any investment account is for it to grow. So it just depends. So you can if you don't roll it to the kids, you can also roll it to people who are living relatives. So if you want to roll to an auntie, you want to roll it to a cousin, or you roll it to your grandkids. You can roll it, but you can keep rolling that money as long as it's used for an education expense.
So sorry, the $15,000 that can be contributed yearly
Yes.
by each parent
Yes.
individually. Okay, and then the max for the account total is $370.
Yes, for that child, for that beneficiary.
Okay, so if you're rolling it back and forth between kids, they can get $370 each,
Yes, they can get $370 each.
including yourself. You can get $370.
Yes, including yourself, you can get $370. Yep. Oh, the other thing I was gonna let you know, although I'm not sure if it would make sense for you now, is that you can. So they also changed the tax law to where you can also use part of the 529 to pay off school loans. It kind of is. It sounds very backwards because if you have school loans, it means that you didn't have the money. So, but. No, seriously, if you have school loans, it means you don't have any way to pay for school.
Well, I guess you can
Someone rolls it to you, yeah. So if somebody rolls it to you, right? So if you know a good friend that can give you some money, you can use that to.
Could you put the money? I think it sounds dumb. I assume it comes out of my mouth now, but could you put the money into the account, assuming that it grows faster than the interest rate that you have for the student debt? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, but it's going to be dependent on the market. So
like if you let's say because the federal student debt is the federal government, their interest rate is 6%, but if you refinance get a 2% interest and then put it into this 529, and assuming it grows at a higher interest rate,
yes.
could you
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can. But here's the catch, though. There is a limit on how much of the 529 you can actually use for student loans. So I think it's 10,000 or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah. So if there's but that idea, the way you're thinking, is exactly how you need to be thinking about money. If I don't need to pay this off fast because the interest rate is so low, there's no need to. I'm going to use that money to go do something else.
Right.
That's going to get me a better interest rate, and then my net is just gains for me.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does your beneficiary get taxed on growth from what they pull out from the savings?
No. That's the benefit. It's a tax advantage account, as long as it's used for an education expense. If it's not used for an education expense, then yes.
Question, how do you define education expense?
They have, yeah, they got their definitions. All right. So the next one I'm going to cover really quickly, ESA accounts. These ones, to me, they have a benefit in that they provide you ultimate investment flexibility, meaning that you can invest in whether you're investing in mutual funds, you're investing in stocks, you can invest in whatever you want. However, the max you can put in here is $2,000 per child. Not only that, you've got to be within these income limits to even contribute. So if your adjusted gross is over $110,000 individually, you cannot contribute into it. So that's why you go into a 529. Make sense? And then with these ones, the other key thing is that you have to have mandatory withdrawals by the time the beneficiary turns 30, or roll it to another kid. Does that make sense? So you invest, it's still the same concept. Say that again. You looked.
It's this restriction, you can't be above it either, right?
Oh, you can be below it. You can't be above it. So if you and your wife make over $220,000, you can't have an ESA. You need to have a 529, or you need to have the next one we're going to talk about. EMA accounts. These are actually my favorite accounts. But before I touch on that, these two accounts. So there's something we need to talk about when it comes to applying for financial aid. With the 529 account and with an ESA account, the assets are considered they're considered wholly owned by the person who's putting the money in. It's not the kid, it's not the beneficiary. So this is important because when they go to apply for financial aid, it doesn't look like their assets. Okay. So then they only consider 5 point something percent as part of that kid's asset. So if you put $370,000 in, right, and they go to apply for financial aid, they're only going to take 5% of that and consider that as the kid's asset. So that's how that money would affect their financial aid eligibility. Okay.
So what does that mean? So we need to I'm confused. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you have if you have an ESA or 529 account, right? When you put the money in the account, because think about it, when you apply for financial aid, what they're looking at, they ask you to submit your parents', W-2s and all that, right? If you had income as a student, you also have to submit that because that is part of what affects how much your award is going to be. If you have an ESA or 529 account that is in your name, right, it shows the parent as still the primary owner. So that's reflected, that's income on their parent side, not on yours, okay? And whenever they look at a parent's income, they only assume about 5% that would be going to college. Whereas if the income was in your name, they're assuming 20% of your assets is going to college. So that would significantly affect your award.
So is it best to have the account under the parent's name?
It's always going to be under your name. There's nothing you need to do here. It's just telling you how to think because when it will affect your financial aid eligibility or the kid's financial aid eligibility. And the reason, so the reason why Dad, what did I just do? Oh, did it die? It shows, it just looks like it went out of presentation mode.
It's still on and it is.
Yeah, you just touch it, tap the mouse pad. It's probably sleeping.
Put it in present. It's not in presentation mode. So part of the reason while that's coming up, right? So part of the reason that I mentioned that is because of this last scenario, right? The UGMA and the UTMA. This is my favorite type of account, but this is also the one that could cause parents a lot of headache for the child. So it's my favorite type of account because the assets are owned wholly by the child. We set up a UGMA account for every single one of my nieces and nephews. And on birthdays, instead of buying them gifts, we all just contribute money and we buy them assets, all right? They own that asset, right? So you need to be careful. At age 18, they have access to that, all right? They have access. The assets must be transferred to the name of the minor by age 21, okay? So if the child decides, if you have like $60,000 in there and the child decides that they want to go buy a Porsche or a Lexus or a Mercedes, they can, all right? So I just want you guys to know that. But the reason why I like this, right, is because it helps children to begin to understand the value of investing. Yes?
Let me ask you though, how would that affect that child's loan application?
That's the other key part about this, right? With these types of accounts, because the asset is owned by the child and not the parent, when you're doing the FAFSA, they consider 20% of whatever is in here. So it will significantly impact the financial aid award. Significantly. So you're looking 20% versus 5% if it's a parent's asset. Does that make sense? All right, so that's the one thing that you guys need to say that again?
So how will it affect it? Like, it will significantly impact the how?
Yeah, so let's say, let me draw this out. So let's say that you guys did a good job of saving for your child, right? And with, let's say, a 529 versus a UTMA. Let's say you have $50,000 in the account for the child, right? Whenever you are doing an application, right?
Why do you need financial aid if you have all this money?
Maybe you're just applying.
I'm just trying to put.
Yeah, you're just applying, trying to see, shooting your shot.
Free money.
Yes,
Okay.
shooting your shot and seeing if you're gonna get some financial aid, right?
Loans, because, I mean, the purpose of this is so that you don't have to take out.
It's so that you don't have to take out any loans, yeah, not loans,
She's about to try and get a, see you have.
grants or some, right? It's if it's there and they're gonna give it to me, why not, right? So in a 529/ESA account, although the child is the beneficiary, this money is seen as the parent's asset. Whenever financial aid sees something as a parent's asset, they only consider 5%. 5%, it's like 5.29 or something. I can't remember what it is. Let's just say 5%, okay? So 5% means that 2,500 of this is being considered as, or the financial aid office is assuming that you're using 2,500 of these assets for the child. Does that make sense? In a UTMA, this is the asset of the child. So 20%. All right, so 20% of this is $10,000. So they assume that you're taking $10,000, right? And you're applying that to the child's college expenses. So that's why it significantly impacts what your awards can be. If you are in a high income bracket where you know that your child is not getting financial aid anymore, it doesn't matter, right? Because they're going to see it and you're just going to reject it for all you doctors and lawyers in the room. All right. So, but I wanted to point this out. The other reason why I like this account is because you can use this money for anything. It's the child's asset. And even as they grow up, if you ever need to pull this money out for anything pertaining to that child, let's say, I don't know, the child needs braces or something, I don't know what, and it's for the child, you can pull money out for the child. Okay?
Child gets taxed on these stuff.
Yeah, you'll get taxed. It basically just functions. It says post-tax dollars. This is post-tax dollars, and you're also going to pay on the increases. So it's basically a custodian investment account is what they call them. They call them custodial accounts. So you are a custodian, and you are managing the assets for a minor. That's what these accounts are. So it works like a regular investment account. Yeah.
So with a 529, you're not, sorry, with a
Yeah, you're fine.
529, you're not taxed on the growth. It's provided that money is used for educational purposes, right?
That's correct.
With the UGMA, UTMA, you are going to be taxed on
Yes.
the growth?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You are going to be taxed on the growth, and that's pretty much it.
Real life scenario, you have a grandparent who wants to open a fund for a grandchild.
Mm-hmm.
Because the 529 is really for educational purposes, but you want something that grows. Would you recommend a 529 or this thing?
It depends on what the assets are being used for. So
Technically, they want college, but what if, who knows?
you can do both. Why not do both? You can actually split it, and you can say maybe we do 50% here and then 50% here. So there's nothing stopping you from having yeah.
Now, but you did say though that they get, what's the difference again between 18 versus 21 again?
Okay, so they get access to all the funds at 18. So like I said, if they want to pull a prodigal son on you, they will. They can.
They know.
If they, that's what people were like. I told it to my sister, and she was like, "We're not telling them," but they will eventually know, because by age 21, all the assets must transfer from that custodian to the child.
Like 21.
They've finished school,
Hopefully.
right? Yeah.
What happens, God forbid, right, but if the child passes away or something?
Oh, that's a great question.
Is it taxed back to the parent or the child?
Oh, that's a great question that I don't really know off the top of my head. I'll have to check. I don't know, since I'm assuming it works like, because it literally is a custodian account, I'm going to assume that you can also get a beneficiary for the child, but that is just my assumption, so don't take that for gospel. I'll have to get back with you on that one. All right. Okay, so which type of savings account is right for you? Honestly, it depends. I can't tell you. Hopefully, I've showed you guys the difference between each one, so you can now make the decision as to what's best for you in each situation. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick. Steps to building wealth. I wanted to take a quick break. So I just wanted to show you guys these steps. So pay off your debt, all bad debt, please. If you have a revolving debt, pay that off. Those are the worst. I always do pay it off with the highest interest rate. Some people, if you listen to Dave Ramsey, he talks about paying off the lowest balance and then doing an avalanche. My mindset is interest, I pay the things with the highest interest first. Savings, yes.
I think when we did the David Ramsey years back about paying off debt, what they said is that you look at all your debt, your credit card debt, and you pick, maybe the least become, and one of the things, they taught us is that, it is always good to pay off your debt. And whatever you do with your credit cards, know that at the end of the month, you have the money to pay off your balance.
Yes.
To maintain your good credit.
Yes, whatever. So the one area I differ from Dave Ramsey. So he talks about taking the smallest balance, paying that off. Then you take that money that you've just paid off, and then you apply it to the next one. You pay it off so that you kind of get some satisfaction and you get an avalanche effect. My approach is different. I pay off the highest interest. Because I'm like, that's the one that's costing me more. Because remember, interest is your money working for or against you. So in that instance, money's working against me. So I always pay off the highest interest. So yeah. Savings, make sure you have 3 to 6 months of savings at all times. Retirement accounts, make sure you do the employee matches. Try to contribute 10 to 15%. I know it's going to be difficult. You guys can do it. I have every confidence in you. The goal is to max out your 401k, okay? And then college, if you guys got kids, get your college. And then, so this one we're actually going to talk about, not in this class, but on the 22nd, ESPP, so Employee Stock Purchase Plans. Does anybody in here work for a public company that offers ESPP? No? Dang. That's rough. I'm sorry. Okay, maybe we won't cover it. All right. But it's a good, if you guys have a spouse or you know anybody, it's a good way to actually start saving for, or to actually save you. All right.
But I gotta ask though.
Yes.
If I work for a company and there are no restrictions on purchasing the company's stock, I really don't even need it. I can just go into the market and purchase the shares at market value. Now, the question is, within the ESPP, is there a discount
Yes.
compared to the market price?
Yes. See, our ESPP, we can go, you guys can go on break, and let's come back in 10 minutes at 11:40, and we might just get to one case study, but that's okay. So the way that our ESPP works is that it's a...